challenge I think that we've had though is that every time we talk about revitalizing downtown in the past, we've always focused on commercial aspects of it. So we focused on bringing in more business and more corporate, big, tall buildings, those kinds of things. And if you want to create a neighborhood, that's not really the best way to do it. Is the best way to do it is find ways to incentivize people to live downtown, make it safe, make it clean, make it affordable. And affordable is actually a big challenge right now downtown for a lot of people, which, to the second point, it 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 tends to exclude people of lower income, who in our city also tend to be people of color or indigenous, and that's a problem. And I think downtown can be a really great safe space or great space, but and one thing I've said always in my personal life, but also in this campaign, is we need to get people living downtown. We need to encourage people to live downtown. When people live downtown, we will start to have a vibrant downtown. And people will say to me, people don't want to live downtown. I said, well, you're not, I don't think you're correct in that because, I have a friend who's 70-ish years old and they're just about to sell their house to move downtown. I have younger friends. I have lots of employees who live downtown. They like living downtown. They're close to everything. It's bikeable, it's walkable, but there are some things missing. There are things like grocery stores, recreation centers, even parks, like those kinds of things, which I think we need to look at and bring downtown, because as we have more people, we don't want to have people driving 10 kilometers away to the nearest grocery store to get food. I mean, everything should be closer to you, and I also think we should be focusing on commercial businesses that are maybe smaller. One thing I noticed in our downtown is we're kind of famous for closing off an entire block with one box store chain, or some of our downtown actually has big walls where there's like no windows. It's just part of a big building. Like Hargrave is one I point to an example of all the time because it's got a big wall on one side and then a parking garage on the other. And those kinds of things don't create vibrant spaces. Smaller spaces that are affordable for smaller businesses, that are unique, they're interesting, they're vibrant, like they're going to be able to afford to go in those spaces. A small business, they can't afford to go into a 4,000 square foot space downtown. Like the rent is just going to be way too high. And so those are all the kinds of things that I want our Winnipeg to be, is to encourage people to live downtown. Let's add another 10,000 people downtown. When we see people living downtown, we are going to have a vibrant space that's also going to be financially sustainable.
I commend community groups who kind of said what I was always thinking, that community should be the ones redesigning. I'll use the word redesigning, reevaluating the purpose, repurposing even Portage Place. I think that's going to be one of the most beautiful things that's happened. It's going to revitalize so much of our downtown. It's going to bring people downtown. I know that they want affordable housing. I know that they want services provided in that space. I know that it's let's use the Hudson Bay building as an example. SCO taking over that building that is one of the most historic, beneficial things that will probably ever happen downtown. And the second one will be Portage Place, under the same belief system, under the same principles, under the same guidelines. Let's do the same thing there. Everything else, I think, yes, we need to revitalize business downtown, but my focus is really getting Portage Place and supporting Hudson Bay in their endeavors.
We've got a lot of work to do on downtown. Definitely need to make it a place where all Winnipeggers want to be and hang out, much more residential. I note in Calgary that they're going through commercial buildings, selecting the ones that make the most sense for residential conversions, and using tax increment financing, I think, to encourage that would be pretty ideal. But I mean, the first priority for me is finding a good, appropriate place to live for people who are currently downtown and struggling in different ways. And I don't think we're going to make progress unless that's the number one priority. I've also spoken about opening Portage and Main. I'm the only candidate of the top three that is saying that that's important. And that's obviously really critical. So those are some highlights. Announced, I'd love to see an Indigenous art hotel downtown, similar to Swatch Eyes in the downtown east side of Vancouver, where Indigenous artists have a place to live, but also to every hotel room being an art exhibit, and tourists coming to Winnipeg and saying, I'd far rather stay in a place like that than living in or staying in a boring old hotel. So lots of opportunities, I think, for downtown, leaning into some of the special advantages that Winnipeg has.
For my whole life, since I started taking the bus to Immaculate Heart of Mary School in grade 1, I have seen signs around downtown that say Downtown Revitalization Project, Downtown Revitalization Zone. And what I know is that none of that seems to have worked, right? Okay, all these mega projects, all these central planning style projects, which I am 100% against, have not solved the problem, okay? Portage Place was supposed to be the savior of downtown. Then it was going to be the MTS Center that was going to be the savior of downtown. Then it was going to be the Museum of Human Rights. Then it was going to be something, right? And guess what? None of those things are true. Because you know what is actually the savior of downtown is small businesses. I have had the good fortune to travel to a lot of cities in Canada and the world. I have visited a lot of thriving downtowns. And I can tell you that the people who say, you know, our downtown, we'll never have foot traffic in downtown Winnipeg because we're a winter city. BS, okay? Go to Saskatoon. It's lovely, it's thriving. January night and downtown is full of people walking from place to place. The trick is you have to have a place to walk to, okay? And today, our small businesses in Winnipeg have been decimated. They have been decimated by city policies that do not consider the risks that the individuals are taking. And here's the thing: by championing those small businesses, the people who would mortgage their house to take their risk to pursue their dreams, those are the people that revitalize downtowns. Okay.
Earlier, I talked about property taxes. I believe that to really dramatically, fundamentally change the way we fund services in the city is to replace the property tax system with a land value tax system. Other mayoral candidates have committed to implementing a land value tax within the downtown. I believe that the land value tax is a more progressive tax compared to a property tax, which is a regressive tax that that changes depending on the size of the property. And so committing to a land value tax would evenly administer the collection of the proper amounts of funding that the city needs for city services. I believe that we could use the land value tax as a way to entice nonprofit housing to coordinate the creation of turning the surface parking lots into multi-use family homes.
The answer is yes, and it's building on what I've already done. As Chair of Finance and on Council this term, we put in place an economic response and recovery plan. And that plan really funds the downtown biz plan, which was put together with, you know, input from the biz and businesses and others as well. It looks at transforming and changing some of the streetscaping to make it nicer and better, making sure there's more housing available downtown, including affordable housing, taking some of the surface parking lots and incentivizing that those surface parking lots be transformed into housing. That's critical as well. And I think, again, what we've done is on council, I will continue to do as mayor, and that's working with the stakeholders involved. So people living in the downtown, right? You talk about all the different populations of individuals living in the downtown, the businesses in the downtown, the nonprofits in the downtown. Having the collective input of everybody can help us build a better downtown. Key to our downtown's health and future is more people living in the downtown. So we have to understand we have to get more people living downtown so that it's a vibrant set of communities. There's not just one community in the downtown. There's various communities in the downtown, so we have to make sure people are living there. More people living in the downtown will go a long way to a safer downtown also, a more vibrant downtown and a safer downtown. So all of those work together, and I'm committed to making sure that our downtown gets the focus it deserves.
To encourage tax increment financing as well, just to support some downtown projects. It could be infill housing, it could be affordable, housing. Immigrants, what I'm trying to do is to engage them, because I've heard a lot too about that particular aspect. Some of them feel that they are not included. And based on my experience, I would say yes. I'm a victim of that. So, and I think we need to improve in this particular area when it comes to when it comes to listen and engage BIPOC communities. I think we need a lot of work to do, but it is deep. And I'll be honest with you, I'm saying this, it is deep, but there's a need for an improvement. We can improve, but we have to work together as a team. It's by action. It's not by writing some document and saying, we have this in place, but let's act. As a leader, you need to walk the talk. You have to do what you promise. If you have some values, you have some kind of, that value, people need to see that in action, not on paper.
On the new investment and downtown plan with the Scatliff Miller Murray, I work within the private sector, and that was a very strong engagement. As a matter of fact, in the large parts of the Indigenous modeling, it was listen, care, listen, and follow rather than actual ideas. And so it looked at different areas and projects in different sections of the Exchange District and surrounding area up to the Neeganon area about how we could be supportive, how we would give back to that community all the data and information, and said, look, in other areas that were more commercial or purely residential development initiatives, there's very specific proposals on a precinct by precinct basis. In the Indigenous area, that where much of the Indigenous leadership is developing projects around Main Street, Higgins, in that area, there's a much more data support. You let us know what you want, we will model it, we'll look at road, transportation, land, uplift. And this precinct idea is very similar. The Red River College precinct was an innovation education zone that was in planned precincts. We created a geographic area. We looked at what would go in there to make it work. What do you need to make that area livable, but safer, all of that kind of stuff. And we did that on Waterfront Drive, and then we did it in the Shed District. Now, in this next iteration of this plan that is being led through the Exchange District bids, there was very heavy engagement and continuing engagement with all of those communities, and the wider Exchange District area. This proposes about 20,000 more people living in this area. It proposes specific geographic sites for housing development. Some of them would include different types of grocery stores, mental health and cultural supports. Each of them is sort of modeled out about how much density would you need to get the kind of uplift in property value and uplift in asset value, so that you had more revenue coming back to the city than it was costing to make these investments, and that those surpluses would then be dedicated to things like affordable housing and parks, libraries, those kinds of things. So this is a very different model. It's called value planning, is generally what we call it, and it's very geographically specific funding. It looks at all incomplete communities. It looks at how do you grow the tax base to be able to have sufficient funds to build the other amenities, the libraries, affordable housing, all of that other kind of stuff. And it was done for the first time on Waterfront Drive. Waterfront Drive cost about $10 or $11 million. The housing and the incentives for heritage buildings was probably about another $4 or $5 million. And that generated about $40 million in new tax revenues from tax-based growth. So you had a lot more money coming back than going out. And this whole project models out the Exchange District and the larger area. And it looks at, if you made sort of this bridge, this public space, this housing project, this commercial development, this cultural development, what would be the uplift in value in land? What would be the growth in the city's tax base, so that you can manage development. So you can do this development, it will generate net surplus revenue to the city over the cost. Then with that, you can fund this development, which may not, but is an essential service, and walking forward like that. So that's the plan.
Well, I want more housing downtown. I want a beautiful downtown that people would be thrilled to go to. I was speaking with the mayor from Oklahoma, and 20 years ago, you were at the same thing, the event at the Chamber of Commerce. I had the chance of speaking with him afterwards. You know, that example of having where they had a downtown that was not thriving, not doing well, but where they started investing in their downtown core on a more continuous basis, has led to some, you know, a much better development, and where people are actually proud of their city, and people are actually moving from New York and California to Oklahoma. The same thing occurred in Quebec City. 30 years ago, the downtown was a terrible place. There were slums, literally slums, and people did not want to be in certain areas of Quebec City. But they would even lock their doors as they went through those neighborhoods to get to the highway, as they drove very quickly through certain areas. Now, those are mixed areas where you have young families, where you still do have a few homeless people, but you also have people from different socioeconomic backgrounds. You do have the doctors, you do have the nurses, you do have the lawyers, the teachers, people in civil service, all living together, young students, just everyone rubbing shoulders together. And it is a fun place to hang out and to be in. I used to live in Quebec City because when I was posted to the military, so I got to see it. I actually saw the change and the revitalization of whole neighborhoods where they became hip, fun places that had a space for everyone. You know, why does the city do TIFs for True North Square? I understand True North Square is extremely important, but why do we not do a TIF for a downtown supermarket? Like a tax incremental financing arrangement, where these are simple instruments the city has, and we don't do it for basic necessities.